Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. I'm just going to start off this session by doing a quick sound check. So if you can hear me, please type yes into the chat box located on the right-hand side of your screen. Can everybody hear me? Let's make sure we're live and the audio's working. Fantastic. Still got a couple of people joining us. Welcome. Good morning. No, good afternoon. Sorry, good afternoon. Fantastic. It looks like you can hear us. Fantastic. So just a quick introduction from me. My name is Chantel Newton and I'm the Marketing Manager at the UK Contact Centre Forum. And I'm also editor of our online e-magazine Contact Centre Monthly. I've just got a few housekeeping points to go through before we begin. Today's session will include some polls for you to participate in. So when prompted, the polls will appear on a separate box on your screen. Simply select the answer that applies to you from the list provided, and then the results will be automatically collected and shared with you, our audience, and with our panelists for them to discuss. After our presentation today, we will be holding a full Q&A session. Please post any questions that you have for our panel. If I could ask that you pop them in the chat box instead of the question box. So you should have a question box and a chat box which are separate. My panelists don't have access to the question box today, so if you could pop that into the chat box for me, that would be fantastic. So then our panelists can have a look at the questions you've got for them. Our webinar session is expected to last an hour today, and if you are unable to stay the whole session, we are recording today's session and the link will be emailed to all participants within 24 hours of the webinar ending. After the webinar has ended today, we do have a quick feedback survey. It's completely anonymous and it will only take you a couple of minutes. Your feedback is so valuable to us and it enables us to keep improving these sessions and deliver what you, our audience, wants for the future. So we're going to get today's session started. I'm going to hand you over to Mike Harfield, COO of Sigma Connected, and Joanne Regan-Isles, who is the Chief People Officer from Sigma Connected. But first, it's over to Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Hi, everyone. I think the first slide is not moved over on my screen, Chantal.
Bear with me, sorry. There we go. Apologise.
Cool. So absolutely not a sales pitch from us, I guess. Initially, our brand's very different to the other panelists, and I just really to say why I think perhaps we've got a view on this topic and why we're so interested to be involved today. So we're a BPO offering outsourced white label contact center solutions. We've got about 3,000 agents. We're across 6 sites in 3 different continents, and that gives us a really interesting view of the market or the labour market around the globe at the moment. We work across 5 different sectors with 6 very specific service offerings. And I guess over the last 18-24 months, our business has doubled in terms of FTE, which I think it gives us a really good perspective of how this labour market has evolved during the pandemic and hopefully now into the post-pandemic. That may be slightly ahead of myself there, but as we're coming out slightly, we've got a good mix of work from home and work from the office. So about 1,500 of our employees, certainly those are almost entirely UK-based employees, work from home. So we've got a good understanding of the dynamic between those work from home agents and the office-based location guys at the moment. So hopefully that gives us a good context for today's discussion. I think Joe's just going to talk a little bit more about the less Sigma specific and the more labour market specific stuff. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. So good afternoon, everyone. So next slide, please, Chantal. So as Chantal said, I'm the Group People Officer. I've got over 20 years experience in HR. And I think the last 18 months have been really extraordinary for lots of different reasons. So thank you all for attending today, because I feel we're all in the same situation. So it's going to be great to get lots of different, discussions going. And like Chantal said, please ask questions in the box. So I think at the moment, in the media and speaking to colleagues all the time, what are we facing, as an industry? So if you can see here, 1 in 4 workers are considering changing jobs in the next 3 to 6 months. 30% of all frontline workers are thinking they're very likely to change jobs. People are considering leaving the contact centre roles for better career prospects and better pay. And from the frontline colleagues' point of view, what CCMA have said is, the systems that we use are playing a huge part in that. two top priorities in the UK that we've seen are demonstrating that senior managers care about staff wellbeing, which is something close to my heart and I'm sure close to all of yours, and that senior managers understand the tools and applications that advisors use. Next slide, please, Chantal. Next slide, please, Chantal.
I'm on the talent landscape.
Oh, yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, perfect.
So you can, sorry, yeah. So you can see here, you know, one of the reasons that we chose this subject to talk about today was really around, you know, what we're all facing in the moment in our business. You can see here, you know, staff shortages, you know, people are considering leaving because they want more flexibility, you know, retaining top talent and engagement is even more important. So, you know, from our point of view in the industry, you know, attraction and retention of our people to deliver for our customers, etc. You know, now we're all finding it a challenge, not just in the contact centre area, but, you know, from our purposes today, it's really to find out what some of our panellists have been doing with that. So that's really the scene. Next slide, please, Chantal, if there is one. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a really high level overview before I move on to speak to the talent, to the panel about, you know, some of the things that Sigma have done over the past, you know, 12 to 18 months. One of the things that's worked really well for us is implementing mental health first aiders, because we realised that all of our employees were going through different challenges at work and at home. You know, we've launched the Sigma Community Foundation, which we're really proud of, and that's where we're going to be encouraging people to make a difference in their community. We've partnered with treedom, so when people finish their probation, they get selected a tree, and that's going to grow in the Sigma Forest. We're doing lots of recognitions and monthly awards for people. One of the things that worked really well during lockdown for us was introducing Wellness Wednesdays. So we did desk yoga, we did mediation, we did fitness Pilates. What we were trying to do is get people involved and also, you know, help people with both their mental health and their well-being. So some of these things that, you know, we've done over the last 12 to 18 months, it was very much listening to our employees, working with our employees. But I think what we'll find as we go through this session is that employees now want to work for organisations that are doing more. They want to feel part of it, and also they want to feel part of the community and feel that we're making a difference, whether it be with CO2, with communities, etc. So that's some of the employee wellbeing that we've been doing, and I'd encourage anyone to perhaps consider doing some of these things if you're not already. So that's really just the end of the slide. So I'm now just going to move over to talk to the panel about what challenges they've faced during the last 18 months. So if I start with you, Jo, you know, at Asda, you know, what challenges have you faced, you know, both at John Lewis and Asda, because you've only been at Asda a couple of months now, but doing very well. So what challenges have you faced?
Thank you. So I think in terms of recruitment, there are a lot less applicants for roles. I think the competition is amongst businesses to get the best candidates is tough. And I think there's a real need to react quickly when recruiting candidates. And I think by the time, I mean, I've had personal experience of offering a role to a candidate who'd been offered another role in the interim and accepted another role. So, you know, there's absolutely a need to work with the business process, but to engage that candidate all the way through the process, from the first time you talk to them and the first time you have that interview. And you know, another major challenge is some of those specialist skills that you require in the contact centres are just not out there in abundance. Everybody wants those same skills. We've been recruiting a quality team recently in Asda, and we were very fortunate to find some absolutely fantastic applicants. But that wasn't easy. That took quite a while to do that, and the process was quite protracted. So we were quite fortunate to be able to do that. So I suppose from my perspective, from what I've experienced in Asda most recently, is, you know, the lack of skills and then the lack of applications, because the competition is just so fierce amongst businesses.
And are you finding that you've changed some of your recruitment techniques, Jo, as well? Because like you say, I do agree, it's really around, you know, when you see those applicants applying, you know, making sure that you're quickly getting to them. So have you changed, you know, any of the ways that you have recruited, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just that engagement right from the outset, as I described, and making sure you stay in contact with that person before they start. So that pre-onboarding kind of focus. But also in one of my teams in particular, we've really focused on looking at not so much in experience, but really looking at competencies. So in terms of actually, if it's a technical skill, if you haven't got that skill now, have you got the right competencies and have you got the right ethos to join Asda and be part of that brand and be aligned to that brand? Because you can absolutely train those skills out. So sometimes I think you might look at a CV and say, well, they haven't got exactly the right experience, but I think we need to look a bit wider and than what we do initially, and think, have they got trainable skills that we can absolutely use that person in our workforce.
Brilliant, thanks very much, Jo. And similar question to you, Mark, with the Very Group. What have you found some of the challenges?
Yeah, listen, I think that the challenges are unilateral in terms of the ability to recruit. The level of vacancies out there in the market at the moment are huge, and I think we have to change the way that we're recruiting as an industry. We have to create, opportunities for people to join organisations that are not just about the pay, not just about the rations. It's about the experience of working for that organisation. It's about, the level of care, the level of well-being, and you covered a lot of this, Jo, in your initial scenario. It's got to be a rounded experience, and I think that's what a lot of people are looking for today. That means that they join a company that they have an affinity with, that they can see themselves working for a long time, and are supported massively through that journey from a personal perspective, not just an employment perspective.
Thanks, Mark. And finally, Mike, what challenges do you think, you lead on all the operations in Sigma Connected, so, what have you seen as some of the challenges?
Similar to the other guys, I guess where I would distinguish is there's a very different ability to attract, depending on whether the role is work from home or work from the office. We're not finding attraction to be a challenge for work from home roles where we're advertising nationwide. We are, however, finding attraction a massive challenge if we're saying the role is predominantly office based, or even if I'm brutally honest, even if it's hybrid at the moment, the choice that people have, they don't have to apply for something that's hybrid or office based. And whilst there are those people that do want an office, they enjoy the commute, they want to get away from home. I have to say I'm one of those. I like to have that separation in my life. I'm very aware I'm in the minority. So attraction is definitely kind of topic number one for me, and that's our second biggest concern. Our biggest concern at the moment is retention, and I think we'll come on to talk about that as we go through the session. But retention, whether we're work from home or office based in the UK specifically at the moment, is hugely challenging for many of the reasons that the panel have already covered. But that to me is a bigger challenge than the out and out attraction. There are things we can do and levers we can pull for attraction. Retention is potentially, there are forces bigger than all of us that make retention in contact centres hugely challenging just now.
And moving on now to talk more specifically, Mike, from your point of view, can you tell us how you think things have changed in the UK, over the past 18 months? Because, we've all been in the contractor industry for many years. We've all seen these many changes. So can you just give us your thoughts on that, please?
I'll try and do this without depressing the hell out of everybody. I'm sure everybody on the calls is on the call for the same reason. The changes have been massive. In our business, we're in kind of a fortunate position to be able to see the juxtaposition between the old and the new. We've got a South African operation and a UK operation, and the two are behaving so differently just now. In South Africa, we've got, I guess, pre-COVID rules apply. Our staff are almost exclusively in the office, therefore we're recruiting regionally. There's a reasonably a very high unemployment level, so that kind of applicant pool is there for us to get high performing staff. Flip that on its head and look at the UK, and I don't profess to understand whether it's Brexit, COVID, technology, work from home, environmental or economic forces, but a smorgasbord of those things has completely, certainly in our experience, transformed the UK labour market. What we're finding is we can't be any less than anybody else at anything. We have to try to aspire to be more. The choice that potential candidates have got is so high at the moment. Certainly the high performing candidates have more choice than I think they've ever had, certainly than I've ever seen. And for us to compete and then to retain, we have to be at least as much. So if other roles are 100% home based and we go and advertise a role that's less than 100% home based, I know that our application levels will be incredibly low, and our retention for those that do come, and actually our people who show up today, one will be much bigger drop off than we would have seen previously, and then through training and into BAU, CVs are staying out there waiting for that role that gives them the flexibility. So that's kind of driven certainly us, and I think many of the people I speak to a leaning towards work from home, and that in of itself brings kind of a challenge that keeps us awake at night, is that makes the employee-employer relationship very depersonalized. You've now got a member of your staff who you've never met, probably been recruited by somebody you've never met, working for a team manager you've never met, and they're sat at home on a laptop, which could just as easily have been any other business's laptop. And that challenge is huge for us. We like to say that we're a business where we thrive because of our culture, because of the way we do things, because of our ethos and our energy, and trying to engender that into people under those circumstances is massive. It drives an ability for people to job hop. Job hopping is now pretty easy. It's faceless. You don't even talk to your boss. You use the same laptop on the same sofa and you do the next job. So those are the challenges that I guess we're trying to get over. And many of the things you showed in your slide, Joe, are our attempts to do so. And they all talk to the same point. We need to do something a bit more, as Mark said. Just changing the pay, that's not the point. When we talk to our staff, they want more than that. We notice that if an occupancy level in a campaign gets high, people leave that campaign. If there's an easier way to earn the same money, or a more stimulating way to earn the same money, people will leave that campaign. We need, I think, as a group of people, to stop. It was an interesting thing I heard the other day. A new recruit referred to our onboarding journey as better than their last gig, and I thought that's really cool. They've enjoyed the onboarding, and then it struck me, we're not supposed to be a gig. It's not supposed to be a transactional, you're in for a bit and you're on to your next one engagement. That's not what we're offering. So I think the onus is on us now. We're accepting work from home has a long-term role to play in our business. That gig mentality needs to go, and we need to find a way. And I'd like to think we're doing a decent job of it, of bringing people into our business, even if they're not physically in our business.
Okay, great, Mike. That's really useful. Thank you. And Mark, moving on to the Very Group then. So can you share some of the, you've won lots of awards and things like that. So I'm really interested in, what the Very Group have been doing during the last 18 months.
Yeah, I think lots of the things you just talked about, Joe and Mike in particular, I think we're trying to create an environment, and we're trying to create a different type of culture where people are part of almost a movement into creating what the future of customer care looks like. And that goes with the physical environment that people work within. It goes with the flexibility that Mike's just talked about. And I'm going to be slightly controversial. 100% working from home for me will never fully work, I don't think, because we'll lose a power of connection, and we'll lose a culture as an organisation. But what we have to have is flexibility, and we've been working with the teams to find out what that flexibility. Now, at the minute, it's 1 day a week in the physical environment, and it's 4 days a week at home. That could become 1 day a month, 1 day a quarter. It could become 2 days a week. I don't know, and I don't think we all fully know what that future is going to be. And I guess what we've been trying to do is build that, co-create that with our teams to make sure that the environment fits. The environment in the physical locations are about collaboration. When people are together, they're not answering phone calls or web chats. They're working on problems. They're bonding as a team. They're having one-to-one and creating the right environment for change, for movement, and to be a team that improves our customer experience. From an attraction perspective, of course, Mike's right. Minimum standards are to stay in step with the market. to try and be better where you can from a pay, from a benefits perspective, because that's just a hygiene factor. But it's about what you then build on top of that. And I guess what we're trying to create here at the Very Group is one team. You know, we've brought a lot of teams together under the banner of customer care that were perhaps fragmented before. And we've created a similar environment where people feel they've got a voice, and then where people can help us create flexibly what that future is. But we just try to have a load of fun along the way as well, and remove some of them perhaps old stigmas of customer care. You're just sat at your desk all day, you don't get any time to do anything else. You know, you're not in step with the rest of the business. So, you know, if we close the business for a day for wellbeing exercise, we close our contact centres. We're not going to create an us and them mentality. And I think that's really important in a customer care environment moving forward. Is often customer care, the warehouse, other jobs have been seen as, well, we can do that for everybody else, but we can't do that for them. We can't turn the phones off. Well, I think we've got to be braver as organisations and create equality across the organisation, and we're on a path to do that. I wouldn't say we've got it fully right yet, but we're focusing heavily on people's well-being. You know, we've brought in external consultants, Dr. Greg Wells, that we're using here at the Very Group. You know, we're regularly switching the phone lines off and investing in our people. And I think they're all big signs of how the industry needs to change moving forward. And Mike summed it up. The power between the business and the employee has completely changed. We are an employee-driven nation now, particularly in the UK. And we've got to listen and we've got to support. We've got to create that equality. And that's what we've been trying to do here. Jo.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I love that way you switch the phones off and everyone's involved. I just think that's brilliant. So thanks for sharing that. That was really, really good. So moving on to Jo. So Mike's talked about, Jo, some of the challenges we faced in the past. You know, Mark's talked about, you know, some of the great stuff that Very Group are doing now. So do you just want to share, before we go on to the questions, you know, what the plans are for 2022 for Asda, Jo?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of customer support, the absolutely overriding kind of key thing with recruitment, as I kind of intimated earlier, is looking beyond experience and looking in people's histories and looking through their CVs for those nuggets that you can see the potential of trainable skills. I think for frontline workers, it's absolutely imperative we do that. Really beginning to widen the appeal, as Mark's discussed, widen the appeal of the contact centres. So really looking at how we can attract a different, you know, people that wouldn't necessarily focus on contact centres initially, but really looking at how we can widen our appeal. And in terms of retention, for me, the most important thing is people understanding that retention starts as soon as that person accepts that role with you. So that pre-onboarding thing is absolutely imperative. So how you get that, you know, future employee or colleague engaged from the outset, you know, conversations with their manager before they start, company information, to ensure that they feel really part of the team. So that's not just about ensuring they don't get poached by somebody else during that period of before they start, but that's also making sure they start in a really positive way, and they already feel part of the company and part of the team. And I think that's absolutely more challenging in a hybrid, in a remote environment, and that's a big challenge, I think, for Asda, for all organisations. And I think for us more widely as an organisation, and the function that the contact centres is in, it's, you know, within the head offices, it's very much work where it works. So complete flexibility, ensuring that colleagues have the option, what works for them. So, you know, we've got a bit of guidance, a couple of days in the office, but that is absolutely down to the colleague and the line manager to sort. I think, but the focus needs to be on the individual as well. So seeing some absolutely fantastic organisations, you know, the Very Group as well, you know, great collaboration spaces, you know, some really brilliant things. But people want to go to the office for different reasons. So it may well be for collaboration, and it may well be for just actually because they can't work at home and they want to get out. So we need to absolutely take away thinking around averages and absolutely think about those individuals. What do those individuals need? And for me, in running the contact centre function, that is going to be a key focus. So how can I make the space that I've got work for the people that want to work in the office and the people that want to work at home? And also, how can I equip my leaders with being able to manage effectively in both of those environments, because it is a different skill set. So how can we support managers with being able to balance that? Because in my experience over COVID, my previous role within John Lewis, we absolutely focused on wellbeing was the right thing to do, but we get to a point where actually how can you manage performance if that needs to be addressed? So for me, it's around key recruitment initiatives, it's around retention, that pre-onboarding, and then really looking at how we practically embed work where it works so it does actually work for the individual colleagues.
Brilliant, thanks very much, Jo. That was really interesting. And just on a thought from each of you, really, what would you say that you've learned over the past 18 months? I'll start with you, Mike.
That COVID was the start. So for a while, I think we were all thinking we've got to manage through this wave of the pandemic, and the old days are coming back. And I think probably everybody on the call by now has realised the old days aren't coming back. The biggest learning that we've had is that they're not coming back for a bunch of reasons. From a technological point of view, everybody's got better at deploying tech to enable people to coin Joe's phrase, to work where it works. Not very many of us could do that pre-pandemic. So certainly as a business, we've learned how to do that way better. Our clients similarly have learned the same thing and have therefore opened their minds to that fact too, that we may be able to just deliver in a different way, but deliver a better outcome. That's been a huge learning for us. A personal learning I've had is that I'm a dinosaur. The way in which I think about life is very different to the way in which our agents think about life. And the biggest learning I've had is go talk to these guys. Go talk to the guys when they come into the business and find out how it feels at the coalface now. How it feels at the coalface now is very, very different to how it felt 100 years ago when we were all starting out. It never ceases to surprise and impress me that I don't get asked. You used to get asked, what do you earn, mister? When do I get your job? You now get asked about how responsible is your is the business that these guys are joining, kind of how seriously do we take our responsibilities, both to staff, to the environment, and to creating our own talent internally. People that we're employing, certainly the people when we employ the correct people, they're asking those questions, and it's fantastic. I absolutely love it when I go in, and those are the things people want to know. How do I better myself? How do I better my environment? And that in of itself has created huge challenge, because it used to be for us to better our environment was quite a provincial thing. We could say, well, 10 miles of the office, we'll go do some outreach stuff, and it will be great. Well, we're now saying, well, very few of our guys are within 10 miles of our office, so improving our environment is now a wholly different challenge, and kind of we no longer have that one size fits all. Supporting a local charity doesn't work anymore. Supporting kind of local causes doesn't work. We have to figure out a way of creating a much wider outreach. And I guess to Joe's point, one of the initiatives we're looking at there is, do we have to have regional hubs? If we are going to accept some percentage of our workforce is perpetually at home and isn't located where we are, do we need office space? And I don't mean contact center, I mean space for our staff to go, to collaborate, to mix, to, if they want coaching, they want support, they want the stuff we would have done in the office, do we just have to have those facilities in kind of high populous areas in the UK? And that's something that we're about to start trialing to see. We're really formative on this stuff. We don't profess to say we know it's right, but certainly from talking to our staff, the isolation of working from home may be great to a few of us, but many of them from time to time would like some interaction. So we're going to try that, and I think that will be a learning for us next year, perhaps more than this year.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Mark, what about yourself? What do you think you've perhaps learned over the past 18 months? What an 18 months it's been.
I'd echo everything Mike said, to be fair. I think the power of listening has been huge. What the last 18 months has done has made everybody's voices much louder, and I think that's an amazing thing for us as an industry, and has given us huge insight into how we can move the business forward. I think the second is there's no prescribed model, and we shouldn't all be trying to follow a prescribed model. It culturally will be different in each organisation, and you need to find the right rhythm and heartbeat for you, and that'll only come through the listening that I've just described.
Okay. And Jo, finally, what do you think you've learned over the past 18 months?
Well, we've only got half an hour left, Jo, but I think for me, two key things. The first most important thing is that organisations need to move to having relationships with employees. So the employees need to feel they're in a relational kind of state with the organisation, not a transactional one. And I think you would think that's harder to do when you're remote. And as Mike's kind of said earlier, you can be sitting at home, you log on at 8, you log off at 5, and that's it, your day's done. You might not have interacted with anybody. But I think what we learned over COVID is you actually can be in the office and not be connecting with anybody or connecting with the organisation. You can be head down doing your work. So I don't think, sometimes it's not just about being in the office. That doesn't necessarily bring connection with other people and a connection with the organisation. But also I think the biggest thing that I learned was around actually COVID, obviously had, amazingly negative consequences in a lot of ways, but there's some really positive things that have come out for organisations. So we all recognise, and I think it's been widely reported around, necessity is the mother of invention. Lack of red tape, you get things through. A lot of changes went through organisations because they needed to happen quickly. But further to that, when I look at my experience in the contact centres, when you needed to pull on people, frontline agents, team managers to do something different because we just had to do it. We had to have floor walkers, we had to have different people doing training. And what that provided was huge engagement, because those employees and those colleagues actually felt they had variety and challenge in their role. And for me, I think we need to learn the lessons of COVID, the good things that have come out of COVID, and do more of them in more BAU operating.
No, brilliant. Totally agree, Jo. Totally agree. So thanks very much for that. So Chantal, are we now going to move over to the questions? So the question and answer session, yeah?
Absolutely, yes. Ready when you are.
Right, okay. So if we go to the first question, what recommendations would you make for recruitment processes for call centres given the current situation? I'm happy to take this, and I think a lot of the panellists have talked around this. And I think from a recruitment point of view, pre-COVID, then, as we all know, recruitment was done in the office. It was a very long process sometimes. I think for me personally, and I think my recommendation is that, to Jo's point earlier, we advertise using job boards, or we use recruitment partners. And if we're advertising directly, then we have to quickly get in touch with those candidates to talk to them. And I think it's really important, like Jo said, that the onboarding starts then. So, you have that conversation with that individual, you talk about the organisation. And I think, they may not have had contact centre experience or, lots of different things. But I think if they've got, the right skills and the right ethos, and they're going through a really lengthy training programme, I think we all need to really reduce the recruitment programme, because if we don't, someone else will. So my thoughts on the recruitment process at the moment, and again, I think, we've learned things for the future, is, people don't want 2 hours or 3 hours for an assessment centre. What people want is to get to know the company, because I think recruitment now is it's as much as that candidate thinking, do I want to work for Sigma, Asda, or the Very Group, that each of us are saying, well, actually come and work for us. So I think keep it simple. I think, really, really focus on that whole onboarding experience and get that connection with the individual, so that, you know, they know that they're going to be joining the company, that are going to get to know them as a person, help them grow. And it really is all about, for me, that relationship. So hope that's helped, but that's my view. I think take away the long processes, really get to know your people, because they're going to be the people that are going to learn and grow with you. So that was that one. So the next question, you know, I think, you know, perhaps Mark, this one, you know, what sourcing strategies, platforms, you know, are your recruiters in the very group finding most beneficial now?
Well, I guess always the most powerful, I think, and I love your guys' view on this, is referrals from people within the organisation, because culturally that always works the best. And obviously we work heavily on kind of schemes to support people, helping us to find individuals. I think it will differ industry by industry, but particularly in this industry, in the retail, you know, we're looking to be in retail and financial services, then what we're certainly encouraging people to do now is come into the organisation at that kind of customer care level, but then grow into the rest of the organisation. We're not recruiting, I mean, particularly in the UK now, we're not necessarily recruiting for the traditional customer care advisors that we did in the past. You know, in my world, we're recruiting for fraud advisors, collections advisors. These are people who are acting on a day-to-day basis as carers, consultants, you know, supporting people through vulnerability, investigating. There's a real great career path these people can go on to inside and outside the organisation, whether that's moving into retail teams, analytical roles, or going externally. You know, we've had lots of people come through our fraud department who wanted to go into the police, and it's been a great learning environment to do that. So we've been tapping into different universities, colleges and schools and different environments to really show people the type of skills that they can learn within the organisation to take them on within their career, and that's proven quite successful so far for us.
Okay, Mark, that's really good, thank you. The next question, what are the top 3 elements impacting employee engagement once they join your business? I mean, Mike, do you want to take that one?
Oh, blimey. Okay. So the first one, and it's not a very people one, but and I think I mentioned it earlier, it's occupancy. So we can see 2 parallel campaigns where we recruit through the same channels, have the same duration of training delivered through the same tech, whether it be on-prem or work from home, and we can see very different engagement and ultimately retention levels based on occupancy levels within that campaign. And I don't think I'm telling anybody anything that wasn't pretty obvious pre-pandemic, but the choice that's now available to people, I think, amplifies it. So if we always used to talk about kind of an 85% occupancy level being a trigger for when absence might spike and retention may start to go, and then what we call it a circle of doom. Once you're into that, the campaign's going to really have some struggle, because you're going to have a lower tenure and a higher HT and all those kind of technical ops stuff that causes us all so much misery. But what we're seeing now is where somebody may have weathered a slight spike in occupancy where it ran at 90% for a period of time. Actually, people vote with their feet now for all of the reasons that everybody's already said, that I can redeploy my laptop and go and work at a job that's running at 75, 80% and have that work-life balance, not just have that 8 hours a day of getting battered. And you know, for us, I guess you've asked for 3 elements. For me, that's 1, 2, and 3. If the work conditions within that campaign, you know, I think it has to be a given that we train our guys well. We wrap them in cotton wool when they come out of training. If you call it a grad bay process, that's done fantastically, so people land fully engaged. Once they're actually into the BAU operation, if the job itself is overly challenging, clearly these jobs are challenging, but if it's overly challenging, which in my experience is an occupancy-led point, people are voting with their feet, and we can almost see it as quick as we can look at a workforce management tool to see what the occupancy is like. We can see it from the retention. People are leaving instantly when it's like that now. So that kind of understaffing, I guess, is my biggest call out there.
No, thanks, Mike. And the next question, I think I'll open it out to the 3 of you, and I think this is a really good question around, you know, when you've got an organisation where there's people who've worked there a long time, and then there's new people coming into the business. some of the people that have longer tenure want to go back to the office, but perhaps some of the new employees, you know, can't ever imagine going back to an office. They're really happy with working at home. So, and this person's asking, you know, there could be a bit of a disconnect. So how are you dealing with that? Where you know, you've got new people work at home, and then some of the older tenured people, not old in age, want to go back to the office. So Jo, is there something Asda or John Lewis were doing around that?
Yeah, I think we've got a real mix. So we've got some people who are in the office that are new recruits who like being in the office, and we've got some people that are at home. But I think where we're seeing the impact is people who really enjoyed, tenured colleagues who can look back at all the history, talk about all the things that used to happen in the organisation when people were, you know, in the same space together. And yeah, it is a challenge, and I think there is that longing for people to come back in, and then some of the new recruits, some of them are in, some of them aren't. So I mean, I haven't got an answer, Jo. It is just a challenge in terms of, you know, trying to what the team leaders are trying to do is bring those teams together. And I think you know, really thinking about how you make that inclusive environment wherever that person is working, but it's a challenge we're facing into at the moment as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, especially now when, you know, there's more nationwide and it's not as easy for people to travel. You know, I think the next one from Mark Turner here is around, hello Mark, is around, you know, there has been a lot of bad press, hasn't there? We've seen it over the past couple of months around some organisations considering perhaps you know, decreasing employee salaries if they're remote working rather than going to the office. I mean, and you know, and the issues that would cause. I mean, my own thoughts on this are that, you know, I think the reason for this call today and the problem we're having is around attraction and retention of people. If we were to then lower the salary, you know, I don't think that would be a sensible approach. I'd advise a business. But equally, I also think that, you know, we should be, you know, even if people are working at home or in the office, they're still really working hard. They're still delivering. We should be measuring people by their output. So I wouldn't recommend a business consider reducing the salaries. To be honest with you, I'd be interested on the panel if you've got a view on that.
Same. I don't begin to understand that mentality. No. If I'm honest, we're expecting as much from the guys, regardless of where they work. You know, in an environment with wage inflation, the choice that we've all described, and the kind of mental health challenges and just the general life challenges, as minimum wage and living wage rises, for us to lower base salaries feels like we get what we deserve.
Yeah, no, definitely. Mark, Jo, have you got a different view?
No, totally aligned. I think it's a short-term way of losing lots of employees. If I'm honest, I think.
Yeah,
petrol prices up in a short.
Yeah.
And
God, Jo,
the reality, sorry, Mark, the reality is people, if they're not travelling to the office, will be working during their commute time. That would be their commute time. So I think you get a lot, you know, people tend to work, you know, might work longer hours when they're working at home because they haven't got that commute. So I think in my own personal opinion, not Asda's opinion, my own personal opinion, it's absolutely short-sighted. I think that's not the way that organisations should go.
Yeah. So Mark Turner, we're all agreed, we're not doing it.
Joanne, sorry, Mark's also just asked, could salaries increase with less overheads for remote workers? So it sort of ties into his questions. Apologies for interrupting.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that, you know, I think that's something, my own view of that is that's down to a business to understand, you know, what's happening in their business at the time. But absolutely, it could be that companies, you know, offer higher salaries. I don't know what the panel think to that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced that the cost base has changed as much. In the first instance, I think we all thought, woohoo, we'll let go of our leases and our property costs will go through the floor and these businesses are going to make a fortune. The reality for us anyway is we've increased the ratios of IT support to make sure people working away from the office have good connectivity. The engagement is now a more difficult thing, so there's more support in and around the HR. I guess I could go through the business. I can only speak for our business, we've put more support around people remotely than we ever did in the office. And I haven't done the maths, but I'd be very surprised if it netted at less than what the rent would have been had we had them in the office. So it feels to me, almost go back to the first answer, if they're performing great, we should pay them more because they're performing great. And almost to me anyway, it don't matter where they are.
The next question was due to challenges in the UK recruitment market, do we believe that companies will be looking at nearshore, offshore destinations to support their growth? So, Mike, do you want to take that one to start with?
Yeah, I've got a vested interest, haven't I? I should probably claim. But my honest answer is absolutely. So I can only speak from real life examples there. We've got clients who absolutely wouldn't have gone offshore, who are talking about offshore for all of the reasons we've all talked about today. Maybe it was never in their strategy, but actually, certainly if I look at South Africa, where we've got next to zero attrition, versus the UK, where we've talked about the challenges and no wage inflation, no nothing. There's a very real risk in my mind, not just in contact centres, that the UK kind of eats itself for a period of time here, and it becomes almost impossible to stand something up here. Definitely, that's different from running something with tenured guys, but standing something up new is super challenging here.
I mean, Mark, I know that you use offshore as well. I mean, you know, have you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, listen, I think it's a watching brief. I'm always of the opinion you should right shore, and the right activities should always be in the right places based on skills, destination, and, you know, the ability to attract people. I think it's up to each business to decide strategically. You know full well you can get great customer care offshore, whether that's South Africa, you know, India from a web chat perspective, for the right types of activities. And equally, there's certain activities that are better done in the UK because of local knowledge, geography, etc. I don't think businesses should stray away from that strategically, but they need to make sure they're paying the right amounts and that they're set up in the right way in each of those locations. I do think this will encourage more people where we know service can be done well offshore to consider offshore, as Mike said.
Okay. And what strategies are we applying to retain staff? I think I'll take this first, but I think that, you know, today we've talked more around, you know, getting to know our employees with onboarding, having that relationship, communicating and connecting with our employees. I think that's really important. I also think it's around, for me as HR, it's around understanding employees and understanding people are individuals. So I think, you know, to retain people, if people don't want to work full time, then I think having the conversations and allowing them to be flexible with their hours, I think is great. I've always been an advocate of part-time working. So, you know, I think there's lots of different things we can do there, you know, to retain people. But the first thing we need to do is listen to our people, you know, and understand, you know, how we can make their, you know, their work life and their work journey easier if they want it to be. So that's my thought. I mean, Joe, have you got any thoughts about, you know, strategies you're using to retain staff?
Yeah, I mean, probably I've kind of covered most of it, but I think absolutely understanding the individual, because nobody is the same. And I also think it's fair, you know, for the employees to understand the expectations of the role as well. So we've spoken a lot around the flexibility for the employee, and, you know, them needing to feel part of the family, and the employer's role within that, and the wellbeing initiatives we can offer. That's all great stuff, but they absolutely need to understand the expectations of the role as well. And I think that's really important, because it is a two-way street. And I think, you know, thinking back to a previous question around, you know, recruitment, absolutely, are we being really explicit with what is expected of a contact centre role? So we recruit right first time, and we're not recruiting people when they get in and they don't understand what they're doing, don't really fully understand what the role did require. So for me, there's a whole host of things, but it's about absolutely understanding the individual employee, because everybody's different, but also being really clear with their expectations and what we require of them to ensure that the business succeeds.
Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. And the next question's a really interesting one, and you know, I speak for myself here. I agree, whoever wrote that question, but I think when we'd heard about, you know, furlough, when furlough was going to end, I think we all thought perhaps oh my goodness, we're going to come into work and we're going to have thousands and thousands of applicants, you know, ready to start having discussions with. And you know, that didn't happen, didn't it? And I think one of the reasons I think it didn't happen as well is because with the end of furlough, I think some employees perhaps decided, you know, they wanted to do something different. We read about people retraining. We read about people wanting to go back more into like the NHS and caring and things like that. So I think people have had to think about what's important for them. You know, and I think as well, you know, it's around, you know, when we're getting the applicants and things like that on here, you know, we need to, like I said earlier, perhaps react really quickly and make sure that we can speak to people. But equally, one of the things that we did as well, which worked really well, is we worked with different organisations that were helping, you know, people that haven't had the best start in life. So perhaps vulnerable people, etc. We worked at Sigma with some of those organisations to be able to give them a chance. So it meant perhaps that we needed to give them some additional training and support and coaching, but it meant that, you know, we helped them with their IT skills and things like that. So I feel the pain when furlough ended. No, we didn't get thousands and thousands more applicants. It's still as tough. But I think as well, another reason for that perhaps is because the hospitality industry and all the different industries are also recruiting at the moment. So perhaps some of those people on furlough have so much choice. That's perhaps why we didn't see, you know, the lots more people. So I don't know if anyone's got anything different to add to that on the panel.
Two things that I'm slightly ill-informed, so apologies if I get this wrong, but one of them I think is a huge percentage of people who were on furlough towards the end of the scheme were in work doing something else. Yeah. I don't believe the scheme was exclusive that if you're on furlough you couldn't work. So my understanding is most people had a dual income for a period of time and then backed that off to one income when the scheme ended, rather than suddenly came to market screaming for jobs. And then the other one, which I really don't understand, is Brexit and the impact that had on the workforce and whether that's rippled through. I mean, clearly it has when we look at truck drivers and a bunch of other industries. I feel like we can't possibly be immune from even if it's not quite so direct, but from the knock-ons of that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mike. And the next question, you know, I think Joe's going to be answering this because Joe's background is all strategic L&D, so she's just brilliant at all that. So Joe, do you just want to answer that question around training and changes that you've seen in Asda from the person who's responsible for training across Europe and Africa?
Yeah, I must admit, I think from an Asda perspective, you know, we do what we've always done and we do it very, very well. It is on-site training. So new proposition recently, it is classroom-based on-site training. I suppose we were able to bring that back into the office, but in previous roles within John Lewis, very quickly set up a virtual training. And in terms of delivery method, that has absolutely been the key difference. So going from a classroom-based PowerPoint to virtual delivery, and much more chunks of learning, and then back out on the floor to embed that learning. So, you know, you can't sit there for 8 hours continually learning new systems and new processes. You need chunks of learning. You go out and you embed that learning through doing, and it is, and that way we were able to get people on the floor, taking calls quicker, perhaps ring fencing the types of queries they would take, before getting them back into training to be trained on something else. It's very much about chunking it up into small sections, and continually get them out onto the floor. And we were able to do that in a virtual way. So when I say on the floor, I mean they moved to probably logged on to their and take customer calls with their team leader as support. But yeah, that for me, that was absolutely something that was in training John Lewis anyway, but it was accelerated by COVID, because it was much easier in a virtual training environment remotely at home to have 2-hour chunks of learning, have a break and then go back to it, because you can't sit at a screen for 8 hours a day. So I hope that answers that question.
Brilliant, Joe. Thank you, Joe. It sounds great. And Mark, do you go to, this person's asking about, you know, colleges, universities, does the Very Group go to job fairs?
We do, yeah. We go to lots and lots of kind of job fairs, university forums, school leavers. I'm talking sixth form leaver type events, and you know, we would like to bring people in at all levels, whether that's apprenticeship schemes or graduate schemes, you know, to build a career here at the Very Group, whether that's in customer care, whether that's in buying or merchandising, etc. So our talent team here spend a lot of time at those kind of forums.
Brilliant, thank you. And the question from Sarah is around, you know, are we adapting our interviews now it's remotely? I think hopefully, Sarah, you know, we've talked about some of the things we're doing. I know that some organisations at the moment, you know, are doing everything online. They're using some really good technology. So the person, when they apply, just does everything online and doesn't actually, you know, speak to the business. So Sarah, if you want to contact me separately, I can talk to you about that. But you know, it's good to hear from a recruitment partner like yourself, Sarah, that, you know, the onboarding and things that all of your clients are doing. But, you know, chat to me after about that, Sarah. I'm happy to go into that with the technology side of things. I think what was the other question? Sorry about this. There's so many questions, which is brilliant. I was worried there wouldn't be, but there's loads of questions, so thank you. Customer satisfaction. Yeah, this is a good one. So I guess, you know, perhaps Mark, shall we start with you and go to Mark with that? So with the importance of employee well-being, how do you ensure continuous customer satisfaction during times where you said, Mark, that you turned off the phones?
Listen, we're really honest with our customers. When we do turn the phones off, we tell them we're investing in our teams for an hour, and that seems to have landed well with customers. We do it at the less busy times of the week when we've got, you know, minimal traffic coming in. So we make sure we balance that from an operational perspective. And that time invested in well-being has had a direct correlation on, you know, our employee satisfaction, which has in turn had a direct correlation on, you know, how happy our customers are in our first contact resolution. So all these things work intrinsically together. The customer's not going to forgive you for being, sorry, a customer's not going to hold it against you necessarily for being shut for an hour, as long as when they do ring, you resolve that query first time and the people on the phone are doing it in a great way. So we do have to be more balanced on this moving forward. And, you know, we don't do it every week or every day. It's a once a month, once a quarter thing, but the engagement and the recognition that gets from the teams is fantastic.
Thank you, Mark. And I just think, just going through a couple of questions because I'm conscious of the time. So we're considering video interviews. I've seen video interviews work, as Mark said, with our partner, and Mike said with our partner. I think video can work really, really well as part of online interviews. So, and there's lots of great organisations out there. So again, if anybody wants to talk to me about that afterwards, please message me on LinkedIn. I think you're going to send the polls out. What's the attrition rate that we're seeing on our frontline teams? You know, I think, Mike, shall we talk about attrition? One of our favourite subjects, okay. I would say, Mark.
I was hoping to dodge that question. That's the point. That's the pointed question in the room.
Briefly.
I'm going to give a slightly evasive answer. We've got a range. We've got in South Africa, it's trending at like 2% a month, which is stunning. At its best in the UK for us at the moment, and I'm talking about where we're in a ramp. So it's perhaps the other guys maybe will have slightly better numbers than these, but you know, I feel like if you're 5% a month, 60% annualized at the moment in frontline, you're doing amazingly. You know, the worst I'm seeing at the moment is greater than 200% annualized, and that's across a range of places that I've spoken to, campaigns that we've run, campaigns I've seen our peers running in-house and outsourced operations. Yeah, if I go back to this time last year, 40% a year, the same campaign might be running at 200% now in the UK, which I guess is, you know, a really significant part of the challenge that we're all talking about here.
Okay. The final question is around understanding the importance of retaining great talent. You know, what's our views on a mix of permanent and fixed-term contracts? I know at Sigma, you know, we have permanent employees and it really works. But equally, I guess if we have a short-term project, we'd have fixed-term contract. But I don't know, Jo and Mark what your views are. Do you recruit most people on permanent contracts? Yeah.
90%, yeah.
Yeah, and Jo
we do a mix. We have got some fixed term contracts for specific projects, but yeah, it is generally permanent.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I think that was the last question. So thank you very much for all those questions. It was really, really good to get such a variation. So thank you for that. So Chantal, shall I hand back to you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was a brilliant session. We didn't actually get to polls because we had so many questions. So what I'll do is I will put them in an email, in the follow-up email, because it would still be good to ask our audience those questions and just to get their feedback on the questions that we asked. So have a look out for those in your inbox. If anybody would like to talk directly to our panelists, I will speak to the panelists about what contact details I can put in our follow-up email that will come out to you within the next 24 hours. So Jo, I know you said you would continue conversations there. So I will liaise with the panelists and let you know in your follow-up emails, which will also contain the recording for this session as well. So I'm going to conclude today's session. We have overrun a bit. I'm really sorry. Thank you for sticking with us. And I'd just like to take to thank everybody for taking the time to attend. I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed the session. A very special thank you to Jo, Mike, Joanne and Mark for participating in our panel today. Again, if you have any further questions, I will speak to my panelists and get some contact details out for you. So for more information on membership of UKCCF and for a full list of all upcoming UKCCF webinars, and we are going back to face-to-face networking events in 2022. We will continue the webinars, but we are so looking forward to seeing you all again live in the flesh rather than through technology. Exactly. We're going to be at Contact Centre Expo in a couple of weeks as well. Please come along. It'll be so lovely to see all of you and get that face-to-face contact back again. We've also recently relaunched our e-magazine website, which is Contact Centre Monthly. It's brand new, looks really great. Have a look. It's www.contactcentermonthly.co.uk for all of your industry news, white papers, resources, etc. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you again, panel. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I look forward to welcoming you all again very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.